Hi, all, and welcome to the Construction Biz podcast. This podcast is all about how smaller construction companies and trade contractors who might be just starting to get involved in bidding and taking on commercial and industrial projects can improve their profitability and improve their processes and understand contracts and things a little bit better. Um, my name is Tamara, and I've been in the construction industry for 20 years, or over 20 years actually, as an estimator and project manager. I've written a book about construction project management and contract law for lay people. It's for owner builders and people like that. But I've also been hands-on involved in it for a very long time. And I actually own and operate a business called the Construction Writer Inc., which specializes in writing for the construction industry. So, in the first episode of this podcast, we're going to talk about something that a lot of smaller contractors and trade contractors don't actually know is part of the bid documents they're working on, and that is called the Order of Precedence, which is also known as Order of Priority. Now, before we get into exactly what that is and all that sort of thing, it's probably worth me explaining a little bit of high level stuff for you. So, basically, if you've ever worked on a contracting bid, you will know that there's many different documents that make up the bid package. So you will have general conditions of contract, you'll have supplementary conditions of contract, you'll have a scope of work, you'll have various specifications, different drawing sets, and all kinds of things. And all of those things as a whole make up the contract documents that you are required to bid on. The problem is very often because many of those documents are created by different members of the contract or the construction team, the professional team like architects and engineers and that kind of thing. Very often there will be discrepancies between various parts of the documentation. So that makes it very complicated for contractors who are hoping to bid on those projects to figure out exactly what they're supposed to be bidding on. And it also makes things a little bit complicated because you never know if you're bidding on the correct things and if you're, taking the correct factors into account. One way to handle that would be to go with a worst case scenario. So whatever's going to cost more to do, you would work according to that. But that could make your bid non-competitive because your pricing would obviously go up. So you want to be able to figure out which documents you should be looking at to prepare your bid proposal, and for the duration of the construction period, which documents will govern what you are required to deliver. And the order of precedence or the order of priority of documents is just a way for everyone to formalize which documents have more sway in the hierarchy of documents. So if there is a discrepancy, which of the documents should you consider to be correct? So this kind of clause is common in most standard contract documents, and in Canada, it's part of the CCDC contract document package for most of their contracts. And obviously, the CCDC does a lot of the general contract documents that people use in Canada, but there are also other kinds of standard contract documents that are used by various government departments or crown corporations, or even big private corporations might have their own contract documents. And usually the contract document set will contain several of these sort of generic documents that are then modified by other things. So the general conditions of contract for a specific entity would usually stay the same throughout all of their contracts, and then it would be modified by the supplemental conditions of contract. So this is something that you will see in a lot of contract documents. And one of the tricky things about this that contractors need to be aware of is that sometimes they won't actually provide those documents as part of the bid package. So if they reference it, and you haven't seen it before and you don't have a copy of it, you might need to go and get a copy of that so that you can see exactly what they're talking about, so that you can have all the information for your bid. So this is a little example of CCDC2, which is a stipulated price contract, and this is the clause that governs their order of precedence or order of priority of documents. And this one says, if there's a conflict within the contract documents, the order of priority of documents from highest to lowest shall be the agreement between the owner and the contractor, the definitions, supplementary conditions, the general conditions, division 1 of the specifications or division whatever it may be, technical specifications, material and finishing schedules, and the drawings. Now, obviously, the agreement between the owner and the contractor, that would be at the top of the list because that's the document that you filled in and signed and given to your to the client. And in that document, you might have things like qualifications for your bid and exclusions and that kind of thing. And those things would ultimately modify the rest of the contract documents. The next thing that would be in order of precedence is the definitions. And very often this is kind of a not really all that relevant to the actual scope of work and that kind of thing, but this will define who has which kinds of responsibilities and all those kinds of things. So that's also something that you want to familiarize yourself with. If you haven't been bidding this kind of job a lot, you kind of want to read through those a few times so that you can see exactly what the definitions mean, because this is a legal document and definitions are going to be a big factor. And then the supplementary conditions, and this is what we were talking about before. General conditions of contract are typically the same for every contract that a particular entity will put out in the construction world. The supplementary conditions are specific to that job. So even if the general conditions says something specific about a particular thing that you might need to factor into your pricing, the supplementary conditions could change that. And I always like to say in the construction world, the large print giveth and the fine print taketh away. So you always got to read the fine print, and very often that's in the supplementary conditions. Then the specifications, and obviously written specifications, we all need to go through them and we all need to verify what's happening in there, and the technical specifications. And then the material and finishing schedules, again, that'll be provided, it's specific to the project. And finally, you have the drawings. So a lot of people think that drawings are like one of the most important parts of the document, but actually most of the written parts of the contract will take precedence over the drawings. So you need to remember that when you're doing your quotes and your bids and things like that, especially if you're a subtrade or somebody who's only got drawing sets from their client who's a general contractor, there might be other things in the written specification that's not covered in the drawing. So make sure that you specify when you're quoting those kinds of things that it's based on whatever drawing that you're using or drawing set or whatever information you have. Because if things happen later in the contract where someone says, oh, but why didn't you do that? You need to be able to say, well, we were only given this information when we were bidding the project. Now, the next interesting thing about drawings is that they say drawings of a larger scale shall govern those of a smaller scale of the same date. Now, very often when you're preparing a construction drawing set, you'll have a big drawing, maybe a plan view or something like that, or a site layout or something like that. And then you'll have a lot of little detail sections. And the detail sections are generally a bigger scale than the plan views and the layouts and that kind of thing. So in this case, anything that is a detail that is a bigger scale, so instead of 1 to 50, it's 1 to 10, those would take precedence over the smaller scale drawings, so plan views, layouts, and those kinds of things. And then the next one is also about drawings, and this is dimensions shown on drawings shall govern over dimensions scaled from drawings. And this is very important because very often, well, not that often, but sometimes construction drawings will say its scale is 1 to 20, but it's actually 1 to 25 because when whoever was printing it out didn't change that when they printed it out. So your figured dimension might say that something is 5 meters, but if you actually scale it off and calculate it based on your ratios, it would be less than that or more than that because it's not to scale. So it's always a good idea, even if there is a scale on your drawing, always, if you're going to be scaling anything off your drawing, always calibrate something that has a numerical value, that has a figured dimension on it, and make sure that the figured dimension matches what your scale says it should be. yeah, I mean, yeah. And then the next thing we need to talk about is later dated documents shall govern over earlier documents of the same type. So, as we all know, during the construction process, there could be many different versions of the same thing coming out. You could have different versions of the specification. You could have different versions of the drawings. In fact, you probably will. You'll have at least one issued for tender set of drawings and one issued for construction set of drawings. Um, so anything that is dated later would have more priority over something that is dated earlier. So you always need to be working with the latest drawing set, but you also need to keep previous versions of the drawing set so that you can compare and make sure that nothing has changed that might need to trigger a change order on your project. The next thing you need to know is why does it matter? And the biggest thing about this is that it could be critical in the event of a dispute during a contract. Because very often we think we're quoting something and the client thinks we're quoting something different, and they don't realize that we've left something out or that we have excluded something specifically or whatever. And we get to that point of the job and somebody says, well, you were supposed to give me 10 of that. Why have I only got 8 or whatever? So you need to be able to have a clear reason and paper trail basically that says, well, your written specification said you needed 8, even though your drawing said you needed 10. So because of the order of precedence, we went with the 8 that was in the written specification. Sometimes you don't remember to qualify those things. You don't remember to put all the exclusions in and stuff like that. So it's very important that you are using the documentation that has a higher order of priority or order of preference, so that you're getting the right information and you're bidding on the correct things. And then later on in the contract, so that you can say, no, this was the document that took precedence and this document said X, Y, and Z. And then the last thing you need to know about the order of precedence or the order of priority of documents is how to apply it. So the first thing you need to do is during your bid analysis, especially if you're working with a document set from a client that you haven't bid for before, you need to find it during your bid analysis and base your bid specification on information as per the order of precedence. So when you're going through all your bid documents, you need to know what is the order of precedence so that you know if you do find a discrepancy anywhere or if there's anything that's sort of ambiguous or not completely clear, you know which documents you need to refer to get clarification. The next thing you can do with the order of priority or the order of precedence is to generate RFIs to get clarification. So as you might know, when you're bidding a job or even during the process of a contract and sometimes after a contract, you can generate an RFI or a request for information to get clarification from the project team or even from the client directly or from your client directly. And that is sort of a written confirmation of what information is correct and what you should be working for. And at the bid stage, very often when you get an RFI for something like this, that would trigger an addendum, which would then change the scope of work and specification according to whatever that RFI deals with for all of the bidders, so that everybody's kind of comparing apples to apples. And then the last thing you're going to be using order of precedence or order of priority for is to qualify your bid if you don't get clarification. So sometimes you send in an RFI and someone will either tell you just go according to what you see on the drawings, or so they just don't respond, or you send it in and it's kind of on the cusp of when they're accepting questions and they don't respond. So in that case, you would need to qualify your bid to say, look, there's a discrepancy between this drawing and the written specification, but because of the order of precedence or the order of priority of the documents, we've gone according to the written specification, and XYZ is what we've included in our bid. So as you can see, there's quite a lot that goes into this. Even though it's such a small thing in the document, it does govern so much of what you do during the bid process and during the contracting process. And it can have a big impact on your contractual sort of obligations to your clients. And it could help to prevent some arguments and disagreements later on in the contract if you know exactly which documents you should be looking at. And again, if you don't receive a full document set when you're quoting something from someone, make sure that you always reference which documents were provided to you, and that your quotation is based solely on that information. Because if there's some other document somewhere in the bid package or somewhere existing out there that modifies the documents that you actually did receive, you could have some kind of back and forth later on in the game. Anyway, so that's how order of precedence or order of priority of construction contract documents works. And again, my name is Tamara, and this is constructionbiz.ca, which is a website and podcast that's all about the business of construction and how smaller construction companies and contractors and trade contractors can better apply and use all of these things to become more profitable and to have jobs that go a little bit more smoothly. Thanks for listening. Bye.